Okay, welcome back to all you rogue rebels and revolutionaries. As promised, the second installment of the visual storytelling video blog, this for the month of July. And this time, we're talking about how to lasso and leverage the emotional power of visual storytelling. Last time we looked at the rationale, right? The facts behind it. This time, we're really going to talk about how do we take that emotion or the emotional potential of storytelling and leverage it to improve our lives and the lives of our residents and audiences. So first time, again, science and reason. This time, art and emotion. We're going to look at some elements of emotional visual storytelling, and we're going to look at how to leverage those to make them our stories better. We looked at sort of the high level range of types last time, that static images to dynamic or moving images to interactive visual storytelling. There are also types of visual stories that are categorized or defined by purpose: representational, mnemonic, organizational, relational, transformational, and interpretive. Generally, in the water industry, we're only looking primarily for relational and transformational storytelling. In other words, it's our task as communicators to develop and maintain a meaningful and positive relationship with our residents. It's also sometimes our task to convey information to them that may change the way they think, feel, or behave about something. And that's transformational, right? The persuasion part. Organizational storytelling is more about in-house culture and the way a brand might tell its story, which is also, of course, relevant to water. There's mnemonic, which is a sort of obscure type of visual storytelling that seeks to, almost like allegory in literature, to or metaphor almost, to change thoughts, feelings, and behaviors about something through allegorical or metaphorical means. There's representational, which refers to analogy-based storytelling, and then ultimately interpretive, which is, for example, art criticism, right? The last review of a Martin Scorsese movie is interpretive storytelling. Again, for our purposes, and this matters, right? Because it gives us language to our task, to our purpose. Our task is almost always relational or transformational, to build and maintain a meaningful relationship with our residents or our audiences, and to sometimes, for the better of them and for us, use the power of storytelling to change the way they think, feel, or behave about something. So 4 key emotional elements in visual storytelling, and this is the meat of the stuff. This is where the power of storytelling really comes from: the ability to generate emotion, and a desired specific emotion. We know scientifically that human beings do not make rational decisions. We want to tell ourselves that we do our pros and cons list, and we think about it endlessly, and we come to a rational, reasonable decision. That may be true, that we come to a rational and reasonable decision, but it isn't how we arrive there. Human beings make an emotional decision almost in an instant, science shows. And only then do we seek out facts, seek out reason to support the emotional decision we've already made. So when it comes to changing, for example, the rogue mission, the way people perceive the value of water and talk about it, the global conversation around water, only emotion can make change. And period. Only emotion can make change. So the first element is authenticity. And from one of the directors of visual trends at Getty Images, which is the biggest stock image house on the planet and has been for, God, 100 years, the viewer's eye has become a lot more sophisticated, and this is true. What it wants above all things, above all other things, what it has learned to discern in its sophistication is realness, authenticity. And those visual communications that the audience perceives as authentic or real are 94% more favorably consumed, retained, recalled, acted upon than other visual communications. So the question then is, how do we render authenticity? It's something that's amorphous, right? It's a little bit nebulous to say, well, let's be authentic. And that's because authenticity isn't an action, it's a state of being. So what we're looking for is the action that helps us get to authenticity, to that state of being. And science and experience has shown that the action, the verb, is to be truthful, to tell the truth. Sometimes as communicators for public organizations, or private one, it doesn't matter. If you're a professional communicator, there is always the temptation not to be dishonest, perhaps, but to sugarcoat or trim the edges of the truth. And sometimes, to an extent, that's the net outcome of distilling something complex into a simple story. But if at all times you are asking yourself, is this really the truth? Is this what our audience wants to know? Is this our truth, right? Is this really the way we as an organization see this issue? If you're constantly asking yourself that and directing yourself toward that bullseye, then authenticity is the likely outcome. So be truthful. Second is relevance. Relevance seems sort of like a no-brainer. Well, of course, we don't want to distribute a bunch of communications that are totally irrelevant to the lives of our residents. But it's more important than we think. It's not just about delivering information that matters. It's about delivering information that matters so that we are, as we say in advertising, top of mind and tip of tongue for our residents, for our audiences. That's why relevance matters. So the more we make the audience, the residents, our consumer, the hero of the story, we are not the hero of our stories. Rarely is the brand or the organization the hero of our stories. It always, almost always, needs to be our audience, who is Luke Skywalker, and we are at best Yoda, trying to provide Luke with some information that helps him achieve his life mission, right? So relevance is about telling the story through a lens that means something to the audience's life, whether it means something to yours or not. And through that, we stay top of mind and tip of tongue, which is where we're able to make change. Element number 3 is immersion. And this means really creating stories, and visual storytelling over non-visual storytelling is an example of this, creating stories that envelop our audience and our residents in the story, right? In the sensory perception of that story. People, says this study, want to cut through the screen and let themselves be engulfed by visceral experiences. How do we do that? In visual storytelling, we make the story human, and we make the human element of that story, element 2, relevant to our audience. We tell the truth of our audience through a human story. Element 4, finally, is archetypes. Because part of the point and power of visual storytelling is to simplify information that is complex, archetypes are the shortest cut to doing that. An archetype is, well, the Luke Skywalker Yoda relationship that I just referred to, or the Hobbit Gandalf wizard relationship, right? One is the hero, and one is the person that is empowering the hero to live their best life. We are the Gandalf wizard. The audience is the Hobbit, right? And archetypes allow us to do that. Certain archetypes, for the purposes of example, are the giver, right? The person whose decision-making in life is largely defined by, what will this give to my community, to other people? There is the innovator, sometimes called the rebel, which is the person who's willing to go against the grain and do so in order to make change. And the great archetype that we all know so well, the underdog, right? Hoosiers, Major League, right? These great sports films where it's the team in last place at the beginning of the season that you want to root all the way to first place by the end of the film. We use these archetypes to make stories simpler and more accessible. So as promised, the 3 things for you in-housers, and in this case, the 3 things for those of you that use agency partners. So whether you're working alone or with a small team in your organization, whether you hire contractors and agency partners in your organization, the tips are the same. And this time they're 4 free ones, guys, believe that. It's the elements we just talked about. First, think about the elements, or ask your agency to think about these elements. Second, think of the most true story that you can tell in relationship to the issue that you're trying to communicate. The truest story that you can tell from, second tip, your audience's perspective, not yours. They are the hero. You are the empowerer. The truest story you can tell from your audience's perspective in a way that is human and in a way that leverages archetype to simplify complex feelings and emotions. What is the story that you can tell, right, from your audience's perspective that is human and that is simple? And that's it. Take those 4 things back to you. Try to make incremental change. Each project, do this a little bit more. See the efficiency, see the effectiveness, and let's continue this fight together, this important fight together, to change the conversation around water, the way we communicate about water, and the way that people perceive the value of water. Thanks again from Rogue. We'll see you next month.